What's going on, guys? Today we're looking at Texas basketball, looking at the roster ahead of the 2025-26 season. Before we jump into the current roster, we got to do a little recap from last year. Please like this video. It helps with the algorithm. So last year, Texas, they had certainly a bit of an up and down season. They finished, though, certainly they were in a rough spot towards the end of the season, and then they got a couple of wins late, most notably the SEC tournament win against Texas A&M, which I think firmly got them into the NCAA tournament. Now, they had to play in the first four, where they lost in a game that they were up by 8 points at halftime, albeit losing momentum to Xavier, which ultimately ended up being the end for Coach Rodney Terry, who had spent the past, I believe, 3 seasons here. Let me double check. Yes, with Texas. They went 19-16 last year, 6-12, which was 13th in the SEC, but the SEC was so good that it was good enough for them to get into the NCAA tournament. There's 14 SEC teams that are tied for 13th with Oklahoma, both those teams making the NCAA tournament. So what happens? Well, Texas loses to Xavier. They fire Rodney Terry. They end up hiring Xavier's former coach in Sean Miller, who's now going to be taking over. A couple of players who have left the program. Before we get into this new roster, we got to recap who's gone from last year's team. And you got to start, obviously, with Trey Johnson, who is the leading scorer in the best conference last year in college basketball. Right around 20 points a game for Trey Johnson. Just a fantastic scorer, amazing shooter on last year's Texas team. Now, in addition, it's not just Trey Johnson, but there's a number of veterans that left. You look at an Arthur Kaluma and a Caden Shedrick, two guys who played important roles for Texas last year, starting in Shedrick's case, the majority of the games, or all the games, I should say, and then in Kaluma starting in 32 of those games, but playing heavy minutes for both players. Additionally, Julian Larry and Jason Kent are out of eligibility. Jamie Vinson, a freshman on last year's team, ended up transferring out as well, along with a handful of other players who have left the program. But those, to me, were the most notable. Zarek Onyema was also part of the rotation as well. I should mention him. So now let's move ahead here, start looking at next year's roster. So we've got it pulled up here on Texas' website, and they have it listed here for us in jersey number order, and so that's the order we're going to go in. And I like that we get to start with Mr. Jordan Pope, who I think he may not be the best player on next year's team, but he might be the most important, and I'm going to tell you why. He's a 6'1" senior guard returning for his second season at Texas after spending 2 years with Oregon State. Last year, pretty solid numbers after transferring over from Oregon State. 11 points a game, 2 rebounds, 1.5 assists, 36% from 3 on 4.5 attempts. And the reason why I think Mr. Pope is going to be so important for the team next season is that when you look through this roster, statistically, in terms of guys who average over 2 assists, there's only one guy, and we'll get to him in a little bit later, and it's not a guard. It's a new player transferring over to Texas, so I think playmaking is going to be an important factor for this Texas team because they've got a lot of good players, but do they have the playmaking to really make them pop, make these guys play better than what they are? And Pope, I think, is a really important part because, yes, he only averaged 1.5 assists last year, but in his second season with Oregon State, he was over 3. And so I think he's got the playmaking chops to really, help other guys get better looks. Kendall Weaver, he's in his 3rd season and senior season overall. He's fun to watch, guys. He averaged 6 points, 5 rebounds. 5 rebounds as a 6'3" guard is actually pretty crazy, considering he played 21 minutes a game. Over a steal per game. Not a 3-point shooter. Did connect on 1 attempt per game at 40%, but it's just not his game. He's there to give you energy and defense, and boy, does he do it. I think it'll be interesting. Does Weaver start? If he does, I think they'll have a little bit of a smaller backcourt out there, probably playing 3 guards. If he doesn't, he'll certainly have a prominent role off the bench. Now, Dalen Swain, the guy I was mentioning before, forward, he did average at Xavier last year as a sophomore, 11 points, 5.5 rebounds, but more importantly, just over 2.5 assists per game to go along with 1.5 steals per game. Now, similar to Weaver, not a three-point shooter, 25% from three on less than 1 attempts per game. So Swain's a guy who they may put the ball in his hands, one, so he doesn't compromise the spacing of the team, and two, because with Pope, I think those are your two best playmakers. He's going to need to have the ball to make the rest of this team play better. Declan Duru Jr., really intriguing player, coming over after playing with Germany in the FIBA U19 World Cup. Averaged just over 10 points a game there. Shot the three decently well there as well. And at 6'8", 235, he's got great size in the forward spots. These three guys, Swain, Duru Jr., and Heidi, you got tremendous size in your forwards and wings, real NBA size there and athleticism. So I think that's a major strength of this Texas team. And Heidi coming in as a junior transfer from Purdue. Last year at Purdue, 20 minutes, 4.5 points, 3.5 rebounds, 39% from three on 2 attempts. It's one thing I am curious about with Heidi. Really good athlete as well. We've seen that with a couple of his putback dunks in the past. Can he, he didn't shoot a high volume, not necessarily a ton of minutes either, but how will he shoot the ball without having a guy like Braden Smith there to help set him up? And that's the one thing, I'm mentioning the playmaking. That's one of the reasons why. Simeon Wilcher, transfer guard from St. John's. A little bit surprised he left St. John's. 25 minutes a game last year for Wilcher. 8 points, 2 rebounds, 1.5 assists, just over 1 steal per game. Not great in terms of his three-point efficiency, 30% from three on 3 attempts. Was a little bit down from his freshman season, though, so maybe you get a bounce back. And Wilcher, I think, is positioned for a role off the bench this season. Matas Vokietaitis, really intriguing. Transfer big, 7-footer from Florida Atlantic. Averaged 10 points, 5 rebounds, and a block per game in 18 minutes. So I think Vokietaitis is not going to start, but I do think he's going to play a prominent role as the second big for this Texas team. And John Clark is a freshman, one of a couple of freshmen on this year's team, but the lone one who is who's a national freshman, Duru, and we'll get to the other freshmen a little bit later, are coming over as international guys. Clark is a top 100 recruit. I don't expect him to get rotation minutes this year, but maybe next season he will. Nick Cody, 6'8" forward, was on the team last year as a top 100 recruit. Played in 19 games. He'll be on the fringes, I think, of this rotation, but you never know. Could crack the rotation. Tremon Mark in his 6th season of college basketball. 6th season. 1 year at Arkansas. 3 years at Houston prior to that. This will be his 2nd year with Texas, the 6'5" graduate. Averaged 10.5 points, 3.5 rebounds, 1.5 assists, and a steal. 35% from three on 3.5 attempts. He does like that mid-range area. And Tremon Mark will certainly be a starter on next year's Texas team with maybe a little bit more responsibility in terms of scoring the ball with Trey Johnson gone. Luis Obiora comes over as a transfer from England, as a freshman from England. 3-star recruit, according to 24/7 Sports. I think he's going to be depth this season at the center spot. So, I almost forgot one guy here in Lassina Traore, which is a really important guy, considering I expect him to start at the center spot for Texas next season. I think he was positioned to start last year for Coach Miller at Xavier before he got hurt in the preseason. I think he's going to start for this Texas team this season. Now, we don't have stats from last season. He missed the entire year, but a year prior at Long Beach State, 12 points, 10 rebounds, a true double-double threat. And I think Traore and Vokietaitis will be the center duo for this Texas team. So I'm curious, how do you guys feel about this team? Let me know in the comments below. If you're still here and watching this video, please subscribe to the channel. And until next time, peace.